Hi, and welcome to Fulfilling Career Happy Life. I love season 4 because the theme is a seat at the table. So I'm inviting executives that are in my world, either folks that I've worked with in a previous life, folks that I follow on social media, or have read what they do and admired them. And I'm honored that they're joining me on the show this season so that we can talk about their career path and the things that they have learned and reflected on and done so that the folks that are aspiring to have their seat at the table can learn from that. So, in that spirit, I am so happy to have with me today Cintia Piccina. Cintia has a wonderful background. I'm so excited that she's here. So many of the people in my world are in the commercial pharmaceutical space, and Cynthia is now, but her background started a little bit differently. She started in drug development and regulatory affairs, actually in Novartis, Brazil. Um, she came to the US where she got into marketing roles, leading sales teams, leading business units in the inflammation and oncology space. Cynthia was one of the early folks that got into cell and gene therapy commercialization. She was a VP of Global Strategy and Program Management, Commercial Ops at Novartis, where our worlds collided. And Cynthia, you'll have a moment to correct me if I gotten any of that wrong. And then after leaving Big Pharma, she left and took on other roles as general manager. She holds positions on global boards. And now she holds a position as chief commercial officer at AdaptImmune, where they really are working to address unmet needs in the oncology space. And knowing Cynthia for years, I know that all of the thread through all of this is that she has a real passion for solving hard problems that make a difference in people's lives. And that's why I'm so excited to have her here today. So, Cynthia, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this super nice introduction.
Is there anything that I've missed? Anything that you'd like to highlight?
No, that I think it was beautiful. I particularly loved the last part of it where I think you put it very nicely. I'm like, oh, you're right. Like, liking complex problems that can help people. So
Thank you.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
interesting because sometimes others can recognize this about ourselves easier than we can. So,
Exactly. I'm like, let me
yes,
take
if
notes.
it's accurate, it is now yours. Absolutely.
Right.
Okay, great. So what where I'd like to start is, all of these questions will be reflecting back on your significant career to date. What stands out to you as the biggest challenge you faced?
Hmm. So as you can imagine, right, I had several challenges. I moved from Brazil to the US. It was a big one. But if I reflect on like where it felt, I think the heavier was when I left Novartis. I was with Novartis for more than 20 years. And then I moved into biotech. And my first biotech experience was super exciting. It was actually in the middle of COVID, so it was a little odd, and we had a partnership with BMS. So it was almost like a transition that you're not totally on your own. And then after that, I accepted the position as chief commercial officer for AdaptImmune. And it was the first commercial lead in the organization because they're starting to get ready to get approved, commercialized, and launch and commercialize the first product. And it was fascinating because it was the first time in which I felt that I had the entire responsibility for commercial. It was a very small commercial team at the time, and the organization had never commercialized anything yet. And so it felt like a big responsibility. And not only to have to come up with what do we need to launch this product, how are we going to get the resources, what the organization is going to look like, what are you going to do? During a time in biotech where the markets were super harsh. And so as actually a consequence of the market, then after being there for about a year, my position was eliminated. And it was very harsh because, and it was eliminated because of delays in commercialization and also mostly resourcing. So it totally made sense. But I had brought people, to come start creating my team, started shaping what the organization would look like. So it was very challenging for me to go through that transition. Um, and eventually, actually, now I'm back at AdaptImmune. So it is interesting how everything ended up happening.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying about that challenge, and it's interesting because what I'm hearing is you stepped up into the biggest role you had had so far, and knowing you, that was both motivating and scary, right?
Yeah.
The best things are. And then you were at this apex of getting this research and development organization across into the commercial space, build the team, and deal with the realities of the market in a way that you never had before. That's a lot.
Right.
That's a
A
lot.
lot.
Yeah.
It is a lot.
Yeah. But you guys recently launched your product and you're on your way.
I
You got
know.
approval. It's
Look,
fantastic.
it's amazing when you look back and see what happened and how everything happened. Um, it's really an amazing experience.
Wonderful. Thinking back, and it might be this experience that you're in now in the last few years or farther back, think about if there's anything that you either did or didn't do that you now recognize was a way you got in your own way.
Yeah. And I can see it in multiple times, but this in particular, I think it became very clear because, um, I said that the feeling when I started in this role was that I had to get it right. Because if you come up with a commercialization plan, you're going to use too much money, then the organization can't afford. If you do too little, then the launch is going to fail. And so, and there's not a lot of real kind of expert senior commercial people in the organization that you can tap into to bounce ideas with and, make sure, okay, like help me out here. And so I felt a huge weight of responsibility for having to do that and feeling like I have to get it right. And I think that as a consequence of that, and it felt heavy. It felt quite heavy. And then having to navigate after that through how we're going to, reduce the team to be able to go through those tough times. Um, and I could notice that even in terms of being focused and being able to be present. And I had like two car accidents, not big, but like small, just because I was, like I could feel that I wasn't focused or concentrated or, present in my body.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that a big learning for me was, I think, exactly that it is, that is the responsibility. It's real that you have that responsibility, but that it can be lighter. So paying attention to that, making sure that I, would take time to go for walks, which is something that helps me, but I had to force myself to do that and to kind of come back to myself. And I think the most important thing is to know that there's other people that you can tap into. And even if it's not immediately within your own organization, um, biotech is an ecosystem, which is actually something that my first boss in biotech told me. She's like, you're going to realize that there's people in other companies that we kind of rely on each other. And it's true. And just learning about like the generosity of people, um, having a coach and having somebody that we can talk to really ground me and kind of keep me sane, through
Yeah.
all of it. But I think that that is something that um, I think tends to get into my way. And in this particular situation, it was very clear.
Well, it's such a powerful example that you just provided. And I think it's so relatable to so many people because we put so much pressure on ourselves. You're taking on this new leadership role. You feel responsible for the success of the company and the team.
Yeah,
We put so much pressure on ourselves to get it right in a time where we've never done this before.
right.
And here the universe sent you, luckily, not too big a message of little car accidents like, hey, you need to be paying more attention. You
Yeah,
need to be more in the moment. And you took that message and then that other element of you don't have to do it alone. Those are really powerful
right.
thoughts.
because it feels lonely, right? It feels like almost like the weight of, okay, it kind of, you have to get this right. And it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to see like the generosity of people really with their time and attention. And it's beautiful. It's really
Yeah. I
very nice to
find
see.
I find that too. I find that
Yeah.
too. So, knowing what you know now, you've been through some twists and turns with, big company that sort of has more, I call it more airbags around you. If something's
Right.
going to crash, you got more protection. Smaller companies, less so. You've made a couple moves, some difficult times. Knowing what you know now, would you change how you approached risk?
So I think I tend to be a very optimistic person in general. I
Mhm.
kind of tend to see the bright light of things. And like it's very easy for me to get excited about something, um, and kind of think about the risks later. Um, Although I also have a real hard time like letting things go. More so because I feel that I'm like always loving what I do, and it's hard to kind of go somewhere else. What I think with regards to approach to risk is especially working in a smaller organization in which every decision matters and you have extremely limited resources, which is to continue to have this, to see this light, to have this vision, to see the potential, and at the same time, to be very analytical about how you're going to get there and also prepared for different types of scenarios.
Right.
So it is a little bit of a combination of still, you know, having that vision and that belief, but being very grounded also with regards to steps to get there and being okay with, okay, like what if everything fails, right? So, and like that job, like I lost my job, and I'm like, all right, I lost my job. It was an amazing learning. It was great experience. I can do something else. And feeling that even if things don't go well, to rely on the fact that you did the best that you could, that you put the best that you had, and you learned a ton. And that in itself is amazing. And how you go through this, how you bring people together, how you kind of work with your team, the relationships that you create, the people that you know, that in itself is um, more than enough.
Yeah.
And so I think it makes it a little easier to move forward.
Oh, thank you for saying that. It's really interesting because one of the things that I thought when you were sharing that was your natural optimism. Like if we're talking about your approach to risk, your natural optimism, any of us as leaders, maybe that's one of the elements of self-awareness we need to tap into at that time. Where do we fall on that natural risk of optimism
Right,
versus the sky is falling or whatever you want to call this
right,
side?
right, right.
And and knowing that as a leader, we need to be tapping into this and moderating it with planning, scenario planning and risk mitigation
Exactly.
and all of that. Um, Seeing
Which
the
is
vision
different
and
than
preparing.
exactly, which is different than being delusional, right? Because I think that if you're only like you become delusional, and then it's not helpful. So I think it's balancing that, optimism, enthusiasm, uh, with all right, like these are the steps to get there.
Yeah.
And leveraging the team, and I think if you, at least for me, it has been very helpful to ground myself in the steps to kind of get there as well, because what I do, what my team does today, and what in some therapies, it's new to everybody. It's something that not only is the first time that I was doing it, was the first time that it was being done. So there is a lot of figuring things out that we need to feel uncomfortable with saying, all right, let's try. If it doesn't work, we're gonna have to try differently.
Yeah.
But it's that disposition to learn, to
Yeah.
figure things out, to be okay if it doesn't work, be able to just learn and adjust fast. that is more important than anything. And just the excitement of like, okay, what today, what can we expect for today?
Yeah. I think what you said about it has to be okay if it doesn't go quite right is really important because if you
Yeah,
hold if everything has to be perfect, we never move.
no,
Yeah,
right.
that's great. Thank you. What do you wish you just hadn't worried about? Something that used to worry you, has worried you over the years that you realize now I shouldn't have worried about that.
I think it's all related, right? I think it is having to rely too much on myself, right? Like almost like feeling that big, oh my goodness, I need to figure this out. You know, it's just, I need to carry this. I need to care for everybody, like putting just too much weight, taking things too seriously sometimes. And so, I think that taking things in a lighter way um, is very, very helpful. So I think I hadn't worried too much about having to find the right solution or trying to make things right, and really saying it's okay. It's all a learning,
Hmm.
and you do rely on each other,
Hmm.
and it will get there.
I think what you're saying is really important because those of us that have, that are accomplished, that want to do more, that hold ourselves up as a leadership example to others, we want to have the answer. We want to know what to do. And
Right.
the answer isn't always within us. There's a lot of people that want to help.
Yeah.
We just have to
And I
learn.
never saw myself as somebody that felt that way. I never saw myself as like in any way a perfectionist or anything. I always worked in teams. But then when things started getting more complicated and you're working in smaller teams, then you see it more clearly. So I'm like, you know, I can see this. And then you're
Yeah,
like, okay, just let go. It's all right.
yeah.
Just, a lot of
And
trusting too. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Do you have to keep reminding yourself of that or does it become
Oh,
more
yeah.
natural? Okay.
It certainly does, because then you see how things unfold. And so then it's almost like as you walk, it's the thing, like you start walking the path and then the path kind of it takes shape, right? And it is, the more you see that happening, then the more you trust that it's going to happen, regardless of what it is. So yeah, certainly it gets easier and lighter over time, for sure. For me, it did.
Yeah, good point. Any other, I happen to know you're a big reader and that kind of thing. Like any other leaders you follow or books that you've read that you would recommend to folks that are looking to grow in their leadership?
Hard to pick one. So that I would recommend. Um, I think with regards to leaders, for me, I do read a lot. The I think that the people that impacted me the most are people that I met and knew and worked with, and that I use almost like as role models and inspirations. Uh, if I actually think about it, it's funny, but I was recently spending a lot of time with my family, and I recognized how much the way that my father raised uh, us, me, my brother, my sister, and how much that had an impact on how I do what I do today. But I remember vividly that since we were very young, we always knew that we had to be functional. So we need to be able to survive. And he would trust us with things. If I think back today, like we were kids, and he would say, "Oh, there's this new thing called computer. Just go ahead and learn it. I'll find you a teacher, and you're gonna learn how to program." And then he's like, "Oh, I need this for my office. Can you investigate these three softwares?" And I'm like 10, you know. But he and I look back and like, kind of, how is it possible? But we didn't think that it was absurd at the time.
Hmm.
Like, okay, let me play with this and see what I think. Let me figure it out. And I think this is so helpful. It was so helpful to me, but I think also for when I work now in biotech with younger leaders too, on kind of doing the same thing and just trusting and kind of giving opportunity and open space. And just saying, okay, let's see what can come out of it. That I think was very powerful to me. My first boss at Novartis did the same thing to me, hired me. I'm like, why would you hire me? And he gave me so much space. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And, if I look back, I'm like, wow, I didn't realize, how complex that was at the time and how young I was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even know that it's complicated, and I think that was for me, very powerful. Not
That's
like a
wonderful.
famous person, but I think learning
Yeah.
from leaders my father in a way even.
Yeah. No, you're lucky.
Uh,
You should tell him this story next time. Fathers love to hear the story of how they
I
impacted us young.
know you're right. I
Yeah.
have to. Books, there's too many. I've been reading a lot of things now more recently about all of what we've been talking about, being present and letting go. There was one thing that touched me. It was from a book, but there's other books that say the same thing, which was around how much cooperation trumps competition, right? And it is a book called The Biology of Belief, and that it talks about one of the concepts there, which is that, Darwin talked about how the species compete to develop, right? And then his point was that actually the most complex organism in terms of survival is the human being. And what happened is that he's a cell biologist. And so then each cell had to learn to differentiate and be very good at one particular thing. So then we can join forces and be this very complex organism that has a heart that is very specialized, and a lung and eyes. And so it was through differentiation, specialization, and collaboration that we are able to have this quite complex organism that is the human being. And that was like, I'm like, that's exactly what it is, but beautifully said. And I think if we think about organizations in a similar way, right? In organizations as living organisms, and how our contribution is way beyond just getting the work done, but the entire integration of everything, like all the people and how we do the work, impact that we have on who we're serving, society, like the whole thing. That I think it was a beautiful way to put it. So
Wow.
I enjoyed that quite a
The
lot.
name, you said the biology of
Biology
belief.
of belief.
All right. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. It
A
sounds
lot of
fascinating.
controversial things in the book, especially for healthcare people, but I found it super interesting.
But controversy is a good thing because it can make you think.
Yeah,
But I would think something like that would apply for healthcare people. So many of the folks in our world are really motivated by the doing good aspect of what we can do as we succeed in business. And so
right.
I appreciate hearing about that. I'm going to go to my local bookstore and pick it up.
Yeah.
Good. Cynthia, thank you so much for joining me today. I knew that this would be a wonderful conversation, and it's been even more so. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your insights and your awareness with everyone, with the listeners, and just for giving us your time today.
No, thank you so much. My super honor, Randy, always. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Fulfilling Career, Happy Life. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe, follow, rate, and review. Do all the things to show your support for this podcast. It helps other professionals who want to feel more energized about their work again find us. And if you want to take this thinking further, please follow me on LinkedIn, where I share content on a regular basis. You can also get on my email list by downloading the Career Satisfaction Assessment or through my website. All these links are in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in. I truly appreciate that you make the time for yourself to listen to the show. See you next week.